All right, this is One Last Midnight. Welcome back to another episode of Astroneer. Today, I want to talk about vehicle mobility. So we looked at how to make the vehicles, we looked at how to power the vehicles, but we didn't really look at driving the vehicles. Well, that's what this video is about. I hope you guys enjoy it. Okay, chances are you've made each one of the vehicles, but let's say you haven't, and you don't know what they are. I have a whole video dedicated to the vehicles, but let's just quickly run through it. So this is the tractor. You have the small rover, or the buggy they call now. You have the medium rover and you have the large rover. All right. And by this time, you probably have built each one of these. Maybe you haven't. We're going to cover mobility in this. Now, the tractor, they say, is a rough terrain vehicle. We're going to take a look at that one first. So the tractor in and of itself is, I don't, personally to me, it feels a little bit squirrely. You know, the large wheels on the front make the turn radius extremely quick when you're running it. Speed-wise, it's okay. It's not the fastest of vehicles, but it's not the slowest of vehicles either. It goes over these little rocks pretty well, depending on how you hit the angle of the rock. Obviously, if you try to catch it from, you know, the larger size of the rock, it's not going to work very well. But if you hit it from these flat surfaces, it seems to run over the rocks pretty fine. Going over resources is a little bit more difficult. You know, depending on the size of the resource, you'll either knock the vehicle over, or maybe if it's a smaller resource, you can kind of crawl over it. Not really good for driving over surface resources. So if you happen to see resources and or bigger items, it gets to be a little bit more tricky driving the vehicle. It's kind of hard going over these little plants, and sometimes you might even get stuck. Now, this vehicle is listed as a rough terrain vehicle, so we're going to take it over this mountain. But what I noticed is there seems to be some point in which this vehicle can no longer climb vertically. It just doesn't have the horsepower to climb up the larger, steeper slopes, and this is probably the maximum you can get it to go. You can kind of wiggle it from side to side to try to get it to crawl higher, but normally not. Because of the low clearance, if you're on really high angled terrain, such as this ridge, you're going to have a hard time navigating. Towing trailers in the tractor seems pretty easy, and I typically only tow 3. I believe you can tow more than 3, but it gets a little bit more squirrely. As it is, the tractor tends to bounce a lot, and it leaves you with the inability to steer as the tractor is bouncing in the air. Now, making turns with the trailer is a little bit tough. You tend to make very, very wide turns, so you need to keep this in mind that if you're running 3 trailers, that your turn radius is going to be really, really wide. The tractor in and of itself is not the best of climbers and doesn't have the best overall rugged terrain mobility. If you start adding trailers on there, you seem to gain a little bit more stability and a little bit more power. Beforehand, there was no way that I could climb this mountain, but yet if I put a couple trailers on, I could easily climb the mountain. Vehicles in the cave are tough to begin with, but the tractor seems to be a little bit more. It tends to get hung up a little bit more on those small rocks and bounces significantly over these little ridgy areas. Of course, each level of the caves is slightly different, so you're going to have some variation on how the vehicles drive. But as a rugged vehicle, it seems that, you know, the tractors in the cave does okay. Not the best solution, but an okay solution. Again, vehicles in the cave systems are tough to begin with. Remember to bring an inhibitor mod and also to smooth before you start really driving. Going up ramps, the tractor seems to do very well. Just make sure that the ramp isn't too steep, but overall you should have no problem with using your tractor going up ramps. Something interesting to note is that the tractor can pull large vehicles as well as trailers. Now, you want to talk about squirrely. It's really squirrely and very, very touchy. It's very sensitive to drive the trailer when you're pulling these large rovers or medium rovers behind you. It almost feels like the tractor wants to jackknife all the time, but it is possible to drive this combination. And it's efficient because the tractor itself does not use a lot of power. But again, you're not going to be able to get up really steep inclines if you have this large trailer combination attached. The medium rover, like the tractor, has relatively the same speed. But what you gain from the medium rover as opposed to the tractor is a slightly more mobility when it comes to driving over rocks and driving over resources. The tractor will get hung up where the medium rover will not easily, but it will go over these obstacles. While the medium rover does have more power than the tractor, it still struggles to get up steep inclines, but you can make it up to the top. It also seems to have a little bit more mobility when it comes to sharp edges and ridges, and the overall stability of the vehicle seems to be a little bit more solid than the tractor. Pulling trailers in the medium rover seems to be more stable than the tractor. It seems that the front vehicle doesn't bounce as much. It's more solid. The turn radius also feels a little bit sharper. And going up steep inclines with a trailer combination attached to the medium rover to have some difficulty. So make sure that when you're building your ramps, you don't build them too steep. Otherwise, the trailers on the medium rover will not be able to get up. Pulling the small trailers on the medium rover, no problem whatsoever. And has enough horsepower to be able to pull the small trailer combination farther up the mountain than it would its own medium trailer system. Pulling the large rover trailers seems to be equally as squirrely as the tractor, but to a slightly lesser degree. It's not jackknifing as much as the tractor's jackknifing trying to pull this combination, but you can still kind of feel it when you take those turns that it will try to pull that front medium rover into a jackknife position. Going up mountains with this would be difficult. Going into the caves with the medium rover seems to be a little bit easier on Silva first cave with handling the terrain opposed to the tractor. You know, this medium rover has more clearance. It can grab these bumpy areas a little bit more and it's not as difficult. Going into the cave system, any cave system, is difficult mainly because of how the cave is built and obstacles on the ground. You're going to find that going in with any of the vehicles, you should probably smooth and flatten the ground first before you try to use it in the cave system. Going up the ramps, it seems to handle ramps pretty well. Again, depends on how steep the ramp is and how many trailers you're pulling behind you. All right, the large rover is the big dog, right? It's the biggest vehicle. It is the slowest vehicle. But with these 6 wheels, it tends to go over obstacles pretty easily. You're not going to have too much difficulty going over resources or even going over some rocky terrain. While the large rover is not the best mountain climber, it can handle mountain situations relatively easily. The large rover seems to do relatively well with steep inclines. It will take time to get up the mountain, but the rover should be able to make it up to the top without any issues. Pulling trailers in the large rover seems to be much more stable than the tractor and the medium rover. You don't have that bounciness that you normally do when driving the vehicle. And going up steep incline seems to be an issue with the large rover and trailer combination. Pulling the medium rovers and the small trailers are no issue for the large rover. You don't have that instability of driving. You are going to be taking some very large turns with this vehicle, but overall performance is pretty stable. While the large rover trailer combination is not possible to get up mountain cliffs, it is somewhat possible to get higher up with a large rover medium trailer combination. This all really depends on how many trailers you're pulling and how steep of the incline you're trying to go up. All right, I've left the Buggy for last. It's considered a lightweight vehicle. Honestly, it is the fastest vehicle in the game. And mobility-wise, it seems to do okay over like rocky terrain and exposed resources. And it's absolutely the most agile when it comes to mountain climbing. You can easily get up this mountain in almost pretty much vertical inclines. Now the Buggy does have some issues because of its low clearance, that if you get on some of these ridges, it'll have some problems with driving. But otherwise, I like using the Buggy as a complete exploratory vehicle. It can easily and quickly get you around. It's very cheap on power and doesn't really have too much difficulty with the rough terrain. However, with that said, the Buggy can't really hold any kind of resources, nor can it pull a trailer. So it's really mainly just a scout vehicle, an exploratory vehicle for you to drive off and explore the planet. Alright, so that was my video on vehicle mobility. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you haven't already, hit that like button. If you're not subscribers, please subscribe. We've got a great community here. And if you want to follow me on all my social media, the links are in the description below. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching. Please remember to hit that like button if you like the video and subscribe to our channel so you can stay on top of all of our latest video releases. I release content almost every day. We'll see you guys soon. Bye.